It's the Ballad of Belle da Costa Greene, medieval flow. Olive complexion, green eye reflection, proud black lady, but maybe not in the text.
Hi, welcome to Boss Like Belle. I am just thrilled to be joined today by Epiphany Morrow, who goes by Big Piph, who is responsible for the amazing music on the podcast. And the music wasn't created for the podcast, so I thought I would invite him to tell us about its origin story. So over to you. Can you introduce yourself to my listeners?
Yeah, no problem. So first, thanks for having me here. It's been a pleasure to be on this podcast and get to know you a little bit. Epiphany Morrow, most people call me Piff, and I say my work is at the intersection of hip hop creativity and community activation. So ranges in a lot of things from doing overseas work to doing talks and programming to creating dope songs like the Ballad of Belle. So yeah, it's kind of how I get down.
Fantastic. And just a little bit more about yourself. So I understand that you are Stanford educated, that you are an engineer, and that you've become, in more recent times, a rapper and also involved in community engagement. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that before we dive deep into the creation of the Ballad of Belle da Costa Greene.
Right. So I'm unsure if I could ever have called myself an engineer. So I had a very different path into emceeing. But the short story is like one I did pretty much decided to become an MC the summer before my senior year. So I graduated, still got my degree, but immediately I started becoming an MC and also diving into the culture. So every now and then I'll go somewhere and they're like the engineer, and I would like I feel like that's doing engineers disrespectfully. But I learned a lot, got the degree, and I did do some internships while in college. But since then, been doing different work in MCing and just the culture of hip hop, which ranges outside of just the music, especially in terms of work and community activation.
Fantastic. So let's get to the Ballad of Belle da Costa Greene. Like everyone who's listened to the podcast, that's almost the first thing that they always ask me, like, where is that music from? It's amazing. So we want to hear about its origin stories. How did you first hear about Belle da Costa Greene, and how did you come to create that amazing rap about her?
I appreciate you. Yeah, real simple. Actually came from Dr. Terrell Campbell, who unfortunately couldn't make it today. But he's a longtime friend, and also we've worked together on different projects. And I think this was for Washington University. I'm not sure it was Washington University or St. Louis University in St. Louis, but he was doing a Black Medievalist conference. And we had done previous projects before, and we were talking about what could be done to include me in that conference. And after different ideas, he brought up Bell, who I actually at that point hadn't heard of. He he is very meticulous and gave me a lot of details. But for me to do a project, and at this time it wasn't even making a song yet, I have to find my inroad to like resonate with the person, like make sure that I'm in some type of synergy with whatever project I'm doing, right? And so when I heard more about her, and I could talk a little bit more about like why certain aspects resonated with me, I decided it'd be dope to like do a rap on her. And I think he had an idea for what the rap should be. I kind of had a different idea, and I wouldn't mind. And luckily, he rocked with it, so it worked.
That is fantastic. So I understand that was in 2018, and it was at the University of St. Louis at the time where he was working. And this incredible symposium conference that was dedicated to Belle Greene, but essentially getting at the experiences of medievalists of colour, both during her own lifetime herself and also following on from that. So am I right in thinking that you performed the Ballad of Belle de Costa Greene at the conference?
You are right, which I didn't know that when I made the rap at the time. That's how I was going to have it. But Dr. Terrell is a great person, also a convincing one too. So yeah, I actually performed at the conference. And a lot of my curiosity initially just came from, I'm a curious person on certain subjects. So just the whole fact of the Black Medievalist Symposium just piqued my curiosity because those aren't words I'm normally hearing together.
Yeah.
And then when I heard about Belle and her story, which was also a story that's one from her origins and characteristics, one I'm not heard together. So it's just like I just went down that curiosity rabbit hole, and then yeah, ended up performing it at the conference.
Excellent. And how did you research her then? You said that Dr. Terrell Campbell gave you some tips and prompts, but that you went down your own kind of like rabbit hole. Like what resources did you draw on?
Yeah. So, and if you don't mind speaking, like a little bit even it came before that in the sense of does anything with her resonate with me, right? And a lot of it came from the aspect of, not a lot of it, but I mean, not most of it came from the aspect of her being uh, a black woman thriving in an area where I don't normally think where black women thrive, right? So, and that resonated heavily because I have, from my mom to my sisters, who I hold in extremely high regard, is just kind of, I saw a lot of synergy in the sense of excelling almost past the point of normalcy just to be accepted in those fields, right?
Yeah.
So very similar to the sense of, with black people, they always say like you have to sometimes work twice as hard, but very similar, you almost have to use another exponent when you're also like a black woman, right?
Yeah.
And so that was like my inroads to it, right? So just seeing someone not make excuses or, well, not even say not excuses, but despite all the obstacles, own that position and define it for themselves and have everybody else move around was kind of like my inroads to it for seeing like my mom and my sisters do work. And then it had the other real interesting wrinkle of her passing because it was like, okay, how do I feel about that? But then one thing I always say, because sometimes this is analogous, but I think it kind of matches up, is like sometimes we use our current brain on past brains, right? So it's like, oh, I would never do that. But it's like, yeah, you're speaking from 2024
Yeah.
versus, what I'm saying, in that
Yeah.
era, from all those different oppressions and things going on, it's like from when I could tap back in and like learn more about that time, it's more understandable because it actually, in some senses, is an aspect of rebellion, right? It's an aspect of rebellion, especially if you don't lose your identity in it. So part of that for me was able to remove non-judgmental brain and also insert like historical reference brain and realize like it didn't diminish anything at all. So once that was kind of like the resonant for me, then it was just can't remember the one. Dr. Taylor shot me a lot of information. He was a great source. Then there was a book. I can't remember the first to start with Google, just like doing a whole bunch of Google searches, seeing what was out there. Also seeing if any songs about it were already made, which I figured there were,
No.
but got to check. And then I can't remember, it was one main book I read
It
and
was
found
a,
out a lot of,
was it
yeah,
the biography of her by Hardy Artizone that's called
probably so.
An Illuminated Life from Prejudice to Privilege? Maybe
Probably
that
so.
book. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, that is the only biography of her that exists until now. The exhibition catalogue
Okay.
for the Morgan, which also covers a lot of biographical information. So,
Yeah, yes. And then from that is like, so then I jump into MC brand. Like once I go past research, MC brand acts a lot. It's more of finding the production and then also what are the points that need to be said. Because once
yeah.
again, autobiography has tens of thousands of words, whereas I'm gonna have much less space and also have to like I don't want the rap to be trash. Like I don't want it to just be like, oh, he said a whole bunch of stuff, but nobody ever wants to listen to it. But I want to still exercise like flow and cadence and style, the other aspects of MCing. So it was like, what are these main points? And also very heavily on the chronological order, but also understanding where I could like flip the order up in terms of still making it flow. And so then after that, it's I always say like once you find the production, the production talks, and then it was like, okay, I know where I want to start, and I kind of know where I want to end, and then I know a few points, and it's just like really slowly but surely starting. And honestly, it's like a list of things. I had like a list of maybe 20 things, and with 15 of them being like these have to be mentioned, and it's like slowly but surely weaving them together. And after a while, just because I've just emceed for so long, it's less of I could say how to do it technically, but my brain starts being like, oh, this is gonna come next.
Yeah.
And also, if you do this, I don't know how in depth you want me to go. 'Cause I was gonna sell like a very MC type stuff, but I'm
No,
not sure.
go. Do it. Do it.
Right. So there's an aspect of the most basic rhymes rhyme on a bar is a four count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's called a bar, right? The most basic rhymes rhyme on the four. So 1, 2, 3 rhyme, 1, 2, 3 rhyme, right? But then you have like, you can start doing 1 rhyme, 3 rhymes. So internal rhyme schemes, right? So once you kind of like understand and you have all the words, it's not like you have to have the big moments all rhyming on the 4. You can start putting them on other numbers and internal rhyme scheming. And so once you can start internal rhyme scheming, it's just a big bucket of fun because any story part could fall at any point as long as you all bring it back together to roughly rhyme on the 4, but it doesn't have to be a major point. So then you have all these major points that in a basic sense you would think have to always come on the 4, but they don't as long as you weave the story together otherwise, right? So then it just became like I'm putting words together like I always do. I have enough knowledge of the subject. Now just have fun and put the words together, right? And then I'm sorry, I don't know if you want to say something. One more point.
No, say, please go
Oh,
for it.
then the last part is because the beat progresses, right? So the beat's not just a standard snare kick, right? In terms of drums, excuse me, on certain parts. It more at certain parts will switch up the flow where now it's going like a little bit double time faster. So for me, you can't ignore that. You can't just keep the same flow and it'll work, but it's not nearly as fun as being one with the beat. So for that one, it's like, okay, I have to have, so say if there's a 4 count where it goes faster, the last 4 count should be, for lack of a better word, the punchline, the end result. So the other 3 build up to that. So it's like this line builds upon this line, builds upon this line, but that 4th one encapsulates that whole story, and now I go to something else. So it's kind of understanding the beat and then knowing like, oh, if this is it, what's the best part of her story to telling this? It's like, oh, okay, this is over. Now keep going forward.
That's just so amazing to hear because for me as a listener who, enjoys hip hop but there's not an expert in what goes into making it in the first place, I was just blown away by the level of detail on her biography. So it's really interesting to hear that you went into it thinking like, okay, I need to hit certain things like, she was passing, her dad was the first African American to graduate from Harvard, she was a fellow of the Medieval Academy, like that comes out so clearly in it. And then I love the rhyme, it's like so smart, and then just hearing you explain what goes into that gives me a whole new level of appreciation. So that's just great. I really appreciate you sharing that. And it's funny hearing you say this, bear with me here. I was just like, have you ever thought about giving her the whole Hamilton treatment? Because I think there's such interest in her right now. You did such an amazing job with just one. Can you imagine like expanding that to actually make a whole like Hamilton-esque musical? Because I think it would be awesome, and I would definitely buy a ticket and go and see that.
I appreciate the boost of faith. So it's funny. So there's one other MC I know who actually does bios of certain people. So I saw him do one of like, I think it calls it the unauthorized bios. And I think he did one of MLK, and I think he did one. He did like 2 or 3. So I haven't thought about too much just because it would be, this is going to be nerding out again. So I also have done a one-man show that was I described it as if a hip hop concert was a TED Talk wrapped in a Spike Lee narrative, right? And so the thing is,
wow, wait, say that again? A hip hop talk?
If a hip hop concert was a TED Talk wrapped in a Spike Lee narrative.
Wow.
Right. And it was a 90-minute show of music, storytelling, interactivity, and behind me I have visuals that like help tell the story as I was doing it. So it's kind of these 4 elements going on for 90 minutes in a one-man show. And so the thing was, it took 2 years of my life to figure out how to make, right? Because once you make it once you make it now, it's going to be on stage in a play. Now it's not only do you have to obey emceeing skills, but now you have to kind of figure out playwright skills and this narrative. Or you have to just make it like anthology. Here's a story. But I would know it'd have to be like this overarching story. And that takes a whole nother level.
Yeah.
Right. So,
yeah.
So that's why like a rap, it took a while to do. Like that would be like, all right, do I have 3 years to figure this out? And I don't know if you know, like Hamilton, it was like 6 years.
Yeah, no, I do know that.
Yeah,
no, totally. Okay, so, and I'm just curious, like, what was the response when you performed that in person at the conference? I wish I'd been there. I missed it, and I'm still kicking myself, not just because of your amazing performance, but also the incredible papers that were delivered there that day.
Yeah, so the conference itself was real dope because for me, it was because like it was in a world that I didn't know much about around adult people who immersed themselves in it. So for me, just in a lot of my work is just a blessing because I get to go places where it's not normally MC heavy and just absorb. So from that standpoint of just all the information that was given was just real cool, real dope. As far as the response, it was great as well because it's funny 'cause I described the response to it happens in two ways. There it was more around, man, this is great that this was put into a rap. Who would have ever thought this could fit into a rap? So it's like the surprising factor of how well it worked out in a rap. And
Yeah,
then on the flip, when I've people have heard it who are like more, a lot of my friends who are MCs, they respond to it from like, oh, this is a cool like story because they get the rap proportion. You know, it's almost the inverse because they understand the mechanics of the hip of rapping of MCing, but it's
yeah,
like we've never heard this story, so they're more responding to like, oh, this lady sounds amazing. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah,
it's kind of
yeah.
cool. Like at the conference, it was more like we know this story. It's so dope as in a rap. They were like, we know rap. So cool is this story. You know what I'm saying? So it's a
Yeah,
cool
yeah.
like experience to have both those sides.
That is incredible. And so I actually first came across it not like as an audio experience, but written down. So Dr. Terrell Campbell, who we mentioned early on, who kind of like commissioned you to create this piece, he has a journal called Quimbandus, and he published the papers from the conference, but also a transcription of your rap in the conference proceedings. So I came across it there because I was researching Belle to write an essay on her as a medievalist for the Morgan Library. And I was like, I need to hear this. So I started Googling you frantically, came across your website, I didn't see it on there. And then eventually I found it on SoundCloud and I literally couldn't stop listening to it. And I was like, I need to find this guy and reach out to him. So I think I sent you an inquiry through your website, and you never
Yeah.
sure if there's anyone on the other end like actually receiving those things, but you got my message and then we started talking. Like, what was your reaction when you heard from me saying, hey, I'm doing a podcast and I'd love to use your music on the podcast, and
Well, my
and I'm
first,
also a black medievalist?
yeah. So no, it was levels to it. So my first reaction was like, wait, how'd you find this song? Because it's not like it was hidden. It's just the fact of so I do a lot of stuff, a lot of places. So it's kind of one of those things of on my site is the consolidation of like I guess a lot of things, right? So a lot of stuff that I've done is just random places. So the fact you popped up and was like, "Hey, I heard this song." My first reaction was like, "How and where?" Because I don't even know if I knew where it was. um, and then it was like, "Wait, what's your job again?" Because once again, Dr. Terrell, who's like a great friend and first introduced it to me and brought me to the conference and all those things like that. He has tons of varied interests, so we have like cool like conversations. But and I know, just from being around, like, there's tons of people in different fields. So the second amount of interest was just like interested in you and what you had going on. Um, and then I was like, oh, it's cool about the song. So the song didn't even come to my mind till like much later. It was more at first like, how'd you find this? How'd you find this? Then like the interest in kind of like you and your story, and why that's the song resonated. Then it was like, oh yeah, I made a song. I had to re-listen to the song. I really was like, I hadn't heard it in like by that time, probably like 3 years. And I listened, I was like, oh, this is good.
It
And
is
I was like,
good.
yeah, I forgot.
Oh my God, that's amazing. What an amazing story. So I gotta ask you, since you did like fully immerse yourself in her biography, what would you say or ask her if you could meet Belle da Costa Greene?
Yeah, I think my question would be because of her intense curiosity and librarian, I would ask her, what is it about your story do you think people miss? And that'd be it, right? So like now that on if she was here right now, just popped up today, right? And it's like she could see all this information about her. I'd be like, what do you feel was like lost or that people miss about your story, right? Yeah.
That's a great question. I think, yeah, that's interesting because, like, right now, especially with the general public who are learning about her through the two novels based on her life, The Personal Librarian and Belle Green, a lot of the emphasis is on the passing and on her romances, right?
Hmm.
And she was so much more than that. So, yeah, I think that she would probably really enjoy that question and have an opportunity to say who she considers herself to be and how she would like to be remembered. And as you know, the name of my podcast is Boss Like Belle. I take inspiration from her as a leader, as a library leader. What does bossing like Belle mean to you now you, again, have immersed yourself in the biography of this incredible woman?
I think it loops back to the old adage of it might be an adage or it might be like a book title, but like be so great they can't ignore you, right? So
Yeah.
it's just the fact of like honestly what I take the most from her story. Initially, it's the things we spoke about in terms of her being in this field, all these other type aspects. But then it's just like, oh, but you actually just had to be an incredible librarian, right? So it's kind of like the same thing. Even I've been listening to your podcast. Like I've been listening to has the third episode dropped? I'm not sure.
It's going to come out this week, and I'm
Coming out
really
soon.
excited. Yeah.
Right, right. Like, and the thing that I've been enjoying the most is, yes, learning more about Belle, but even more so of like just the fact you're just a great librarian, and the people that you saw greatness in. Like I think the last episode was somebody you helped mentor, and you saw potential greatness in her, and like was like, cool, here's an extra hand. So the thing that stands out to me in the boss part is like you just are really care about what you do and want to do it to exemplary level, and all the other stuff, how people perceive it in terms of, being a black woman, all that stuff like that is important, but it's like you're doing it because you want to, 'cause that's who you are, right? Which is a
Yeah.
black woman, all these things. So it's just the
Yeah.
fact that you just dope, you know what I'm saying? And same thing with her. She was just a dope librarian, and then the rest of us play catch up.
I love that. I'm going to make that my new job title, Dope Librarian.
Yeah, yeah. Like that, like, like that was it. It was like, it's just the fact, all the other stuff adds to the narrative, but at the end of the day, you're like good at your job, and great at your job, right?
Yeah. So I'm sorry to spring this on you, but you know how I would love to end this conversation? You know what I'm going to say, right?
Right.
How about if I start? Okay?
How about,
If
okay,
I start, olive complexion, green-eyed reflection, proud black lady, but maybe not in detection. Now over to you.
right. So here's the problem. This is gonna sound weird. I forget all of my raps, like literally before a show. Yes, like that's why I get surprised when I hear them. Like when every time I turn on the podcast, I'm like, this is good. So I could probably rap along after a while, but like you took the few lines that I know.
Okay, then you just do those few lines then, because it's just
We can say, what is it? Olive complexion,
green-eyed
what-
reflection,
green eye,
proud black lady, but maybe
but
not
maybe
in
not in
detection.
detection. Yeah, that's all I got. If you would have gave me a heads up, I would have looked at it real quick, and I
Oh,
was like, I can
man.
do this whole thing.
Wait,
But,
okay,
yeah.
wait. I have to get this from you. Let me see if I can send you.
Hold on. Yeah, if you want me, if I pull up the words,
I have the
I
word.
got you.
I have
I
the
got
word.
you.
Oh, do you have the words?
I think so. I should.
Okay, I have it. I can even. 1 second, because I actually have the issue of Quimbandas right up
This
in
is
front of
funny.
me. I know.
Do it. I think, like, hopefully these are the final lyrics. I can do it off of this. Okay.
Well, I
How far do you want me to? I can do it. I pulled them up.
oh, you do? Okay. Just
Yeah.
just a
Just
little bit.
begin.
Whatever you feel comfortable with.
Cool, cool. Olive complexion, green eye reflection, proud black lady, but maybe not in detection. Not because neglection. We're talking early 1900s. Her mom's chose to pass and kids took direction. Belle da Costa Greene is the queen librarian. Cool.
Love it.
Yeah. I
you for
needed a little
going with that.
assistance. I just needed a little assistance.
Thank
yeah.
you for going with that. That's so cool.
problem.
And do you know what is clearly coming across to me is that this is just like one of many brilliant things that you've turned out. And so it's funny that you don't remember the words when like literally everyone is going crazy about this song now, like from the podcast. But it's just you work on so many different projects, and maybe we can have a part 2 conversation and listen about what else you're working on, because you've mentioned to me documentaries and, you know, again, you do a lot of community engagement. But for today, we'll call that, this is a perfect ending to our conversation today. But I'm looking forward to hopefully meeting you in person at some point. You're going to be speaking at the Morgan in November, correct?
Right. I have to
yeah.
remember my lyrics for that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking about maybe trying to come up for that, literally for the day, and come back again, because it would be great to meet you in person and hear about all of the other creative projects that have sprung out of her biography as well. So
Real
thank
cool.
you. Thank you so much for joining me this morning. I appreciate it. And that was just brilliant. And stay in touch.
Okay, I'll do. Thank you.
Take
Appreciate
care.
what you're doing. Thanks.
Okay, bye.
It's the Ballad of Belle da Costa Greene. Medieval flow. Olive complexion, green eye reflection. Proud black lady, but maybe not in detection. Not cause neglection, we're talking early 1900s. Her moms chose to pass, kids took direction. Belle da Costa Greene is the queen librarian. Born Marion Greener, but she went contrarian. See, her father was Harvard educated and black. In fact, the first to get that stat, so better know that. But no Kodak needed for all the richest feats. Her mom was special too. Miss Genevieve Fleet, straight from D.C. where she married Mr. Richard. Love started flowing and Belle entered the picture. Before image fully formed, went they separate ways. Changed their last name and a new life paved. And that path was passing for white, which lasted for life. If asking if right, don't judge. It was cause life was much easier if you ain't gotta do it when black. And Belle understood, so she did just that. Claimed the Portuguese background was for a stellar mind. It also should be noted, Belle was kinda fine, gorgeous, but her brain's knowledge was more important than catching the attention of Mr. Junius Morgan. It's more when you realize it's Uncle JP who lured her out of Princeton's library to a job at his quarters. It's JP Morgan, so we talking big time. She illuminated, so we're talking big shine. I don't mean to lecture, but she was legendary. Pip Morgan Library's first director. Expert in illuminating manuscripts and bargaining prowess. $1 million negotiations, she had the power. Was giving Jorge English painting up one early hour, but she knew it was a fraud. For that we give applause. She caught the Spanish forger, tricking folks for days, but she was sharp though, and caught up on his ways. Plus the 1939 situation got merrier. Elected fellow Medieval Academy of America. The second woman and the first person of color, Miss Belle da Costa Greene, unlike any other.